a devoted fan, and a plugged-in reporter. There is no better way to talk about hoops than that. Mia O'Brien and Mitch Northam have you covered for the W, the NCAA, Unrivaled, and anything else that involves a ball and a backboard. This is the Women's Basketball Podcast.
We've got a reporter who's as plugged in as anyone, but it's not Mitch Northam. Mitch on family duty on this fine December 1st. And so Lindsay Gibbs, the women's sports lead at CBS, sitting in with us here on the Women's Basketball Podcast. I am still your favorite host and friend of reporters and also NFL reporter, ESPN Radio's Mia O'Brien, also noted devoted fan. And of course, she is Lindsay Gibbs. Appreciate you hanging out with us, Lindsay.
Thanks so much for having me. I can't, nobody can fill Mitch's shoes, but, we'll do our best to scrape by. I'm a big fan of the podcast. So happy to be here.
We appreciate it because we are always looking to expand the OG Triangle Media and Women's Basketball Podcast family, our world. And now here you are, your first appearance as one of our reoccurring, what do we call it? Friends of the pod, guest host, sometimes host, I think is what we refer to Kevin Schwartz and Rebecca Kopelman. So welcome to the sometimes host category of the Women's Basketball Podcast, Lindsay.
Thank you. And look, I'm a North Carolinian too, so I feel right at home here.
Excellent. We're going to talk about those teams in the Triangle for sure, especially that one that calls Durham home. Yikes. I don't know if they're going to be welcome at home anymore. Oh, did she say that? Lindsay, of course, is not only the women's sports lead over at CBS Sports, she is also the co-host of the Hang Up and Listen podcast, and she is also the author of Power Plays, the newsletter. So make sure you subscribe to Power Plays ASAP. Before this podcast ends. You are going to want to get more content from Lindsay in the wide world of women's basketball, but women's sports at large. We begin, as we do each week here on the Women's Basketball Podcast, with our starting five, the five biggest games from the week that was. We get you caught up to speed on what you might have missed. We look ahead at the week that is to come. And so, Lindsay, it feels fitting coming out of Feast Week. We have to lead with the championship game of the Players Era Invitational. Before I go any further, though, diving specifically into South Carolina and Texas, I am curious, since we really have sounded off in the last two episodes with regards to those multi-team events and the death of the Maui Invitational, the death of Battle for Atlantis on the men's side, and the idea of these NIL-driven tournaments. While both Mitch and I have said we're for the players and agree, why would you spend $3 million to go to Maui when you can get paid $1 million to play in Las Vegas? Respect to it. But the nostalgia in me, it does hurt when I see this lifeless, largely empty arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. And I'm appreciative that the players are going to get paid, but it still hurts a little bit as a basketball purist.
I get that, but I don't have as much affinity for Feast Week. Like I'm not very precious about Feast Week. We're just making things up. Like, I get that the traditions exist, but I don't think they've been as established in the women's game as they have in the men's. And so I'm really all for the women's side, especially making their own Feast Week traditions and trying to get actual money out of this. I don't know if Players Era is the answer. Been a lot of talk about how big the men's event there is getting. Of course, we got a lot of great basketball on the women's event. But, they were also very vocal about the fact that their women's event wasn't making any money, which, well, the men's didn't earn money last year. It just did this year. And it looks like you guys didn't put much promo into the women's event. There's always the hard thing when the women's and men's events are combined, when the women are treated like second-class citizens and like an afterthought. And even though the players were getting paid, they got the $1 million. And for me, it was great because I could actually watch these as somebody who will not subscribe to Flow Sports.
No Flow Sports, no Baller TV. She's clearly a listener of the pod, folks.
I was thrilled that the best thing for me was that it had the subscription, the broadcast partnership with Turner. And so you could see it on your cable package and get good broadcast. But I don't know. I don't know if this is the answer for the women's game. They're expanding the men's field to 32 next year. I don't know what they're expanding the women's tournament to, if they are expanding the women's tournament. We don't know.
Well, I think what's going to be interesting, and not to go on a side tangent here, but I'm very fascinated with the reported move of Elle Duncan from ESPN to Netflix. This notion of perhaps could Netflix get into the college basketball world? Could they try to create more tournaments like this that then create NIL opportunities for teams and players? And in turn, that leads to easier access for many of us if you do have a Netflix account in order to watch those games, akin to Turner, as long as you have cable. And therefore, I think that that's good business so long as you're taking the TV rights deal as a priority. And again, not to make this a side tangent, but I know living in Jacksonville, when Tony Khan launched AEW as a competitor to WWE, the first thing he told me off to the side was, I have a TV rights deal secured with Turner. And as soon as he said that, I was like, oh, all right. But like, you're clearly playing the long game here. So shout out to the Players Era that they actually said, you know what? That is the most important thing. Even if we can't get butts in the seats and it's not as much of a spectacle, boots on the ground, at least if we can get people watching the games, then that is where we're actually going to make our dough, our bread, our butter. They also made their bread and butter on the court, the actual game themselves. This was an elite foursome out in Las Vegas between Texas, South Carolina, UCLA, also the Duke Blue Devils. Thank you for participating. There will be a trophy on your way out the door, but I think it's just a participation medal. Texas, South Carolina, though, in the championship game, Texas prevails on a last-second Rory Harmon bucket. She had just 6 points in this game after having 26 points in the first-round victory over UCLA, if we want to call it a first-rounder, Lindsay. Rory is now the career leader in assists in Texas history. Again, just 4 points prior to that literal last second floater that won the game over South Carolina. Before I go any further inside the numbers, you tell me, was this game more about Texas winning it, or was it about South Carolina maybe showing some warts and some flaws to their game?
I think it was about Texas winning it. Look, I've been on the Texas bandwagon since before the season. CBS asked us to make some kind of bold predictions for the season, and mine was that UConn wouldn't win because everyone's picking them to win. Once again, I know it's a bold, I'm not saying UConn can't win it all, but I picked the field over UConn because I think there's a lot of strength at the top right now. And since I said that, I had to pick someone, and I picked Texas. I think that they added some important offense to that really stalwart defense. And I also think you see players in year 2 after these ACL injuries really, thriving much more so. And so, I think we're going to see really great things from Rory Harmon this year. And I think you're already seeing her and Madison Booker look more comfortable than they even did in the Final Four run. So, it wasn't a pretty game, and it was the second day of a back-to-back in Vegas, with a lot of travel involved. Texas was down to just a 7-woman rotation here, just using 2 bench players. They had 3 of their rotation players injured. So a lot of miles on those legs. South Carolina has a little bit more, I don't know if depth is the right word, but players to play.
They do. There are more physical players on the roster that are active. I don't know if they play as well as Justice Carlton's 13 points off the bench in supporting that front court cast and maybe actually providing some offense compared to the just 2 bench points that South Carolina was able to add to that box score in that loss in the championship.
Yeah. But anyways, Texas had control of this game in the first half. We see that against South Carolina sometimes, and then South Carolina has a good third quarter, which they did in this game, and the teams go away. Texas did not go away. That really showed me something. Them winning, beating UCLA and South Carolina on back-to-back days. That's a statement. Any way you put it. I don't care that, this wasn't South Carolina's best, and by no means should South Carolina be hitting any sort of panic buttons, and Dawn Staley certainly wasn't. About as happy as you can see a coach after a loss was Dawn Staley in this one. But to me, I left really impressed with Texas and really excited to see how this team grows throughout SEC play.
Pat Summitt once said, if we lose 1 game, I feel good about our chances to win the national championship. 1 game in the regular season. If we lose 2 games, I know we will win the national championship game. And that is how I would liken Dawn Staley's vibe after that one, because she knows, Lindsay, that starting five is as talented as any in the country right now. I think now it's just a matter of how do I try to bring these younger players along, knowing that I do not have the depth that I anticipated having maybe 3 months ago, because I thought I'd have Chloe Kitts. I thought that I would have Watkins back as well. I thought I, could have some front court depth that could then really flesh out this roster with my 3 all-star guards. And now they don't have those players. Maybe they can develop them off the bench. I think for Texas, and as you will find, and you know this from listening to the pod and now as a sometimes host of the women's basketball podcast, I'm trying to come up with a college football analogy. Producer Dimitri may chime in and have one for Vic Schaefer, because when they nearly blew that 23-point lead to UCLA in the first game of this back-to-back in Las Vegas, I think there were a lot of people who said, oh, yeah, that's Vic. Can't win the big one. Going to lose to Cori Close. Oh, yeah. And it's funny because it's as if we all forgot that South Carolina and Texas split their SEC regular season series last year. Like this is the same Texas team with the 2 biggest front runners on the floor that were the ringleaders last year for both the offensive and defensive production. And they get some key contributors back. They get some key bench players back. I'd still like Kyla Oldacre for if no other reason. I mean, just the sheer size that she brings in the front court, that it's the earth theory. There's not many wandering the earth with that type of size. Ditto to Madison Booker, of course, in the front court as well. And so to that point, I don't know why we keep counting them out. Like, this is the same team largely that made the run that we saw last year. So I just don't know why is there Vic slander, Lindsay? Let me make it nice and neat. Why do people slander Vic Schaefer?
I mean, think of the Mississippi State days. Like, he would get to the Final Four and then he would just always come up short, like just short. But I think that doesn't value enough what he did with those teams to get them to national championship games, right? Like, as painful as it was, it's not like he was taking over this, preeminent program that was, used to being on that stage every single day, and he just couldn't get over the hump. He got them to that hump. He had to get over a lot of humps to get to that final hump. And, I just don't really hold that against him that much. I think like any coach, you can nitpick some of the decisions that he's made. But I don't know. I'm a Vic Schaefer believer. Maybe it's just, I've had the Kool-Aid. It's the Southern accent, the self-effacing talk, the tears, he's a little bit like a more polished Wes Moore, they're just who I spend a lot of, time interviewing here in North Carolina. I just think that he is a winner, even though he hasn't won a national championship.
I almost said he did, just because I go back to 2017 and I feel like Mississippi State won a national title just because of the run that they were on. I know they lost to South Carolina in the championship game, but I feel like they won just because of the run they went on, half court buzzer beater, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, for that program. And that's why we're going to have to workshop a college football analogy, because I almost said Kalen DeBoer, but I think producer Dimitri would stop the recording if I said that, because I don't know who would be another example of someone who, as he chimes in. Yes, Dimitri.
Yeah, sorry, my mic's not plugged in. I had the same initial thought. I think people forget that Kalen DeBoer is one of the 5 best coaches in the country, because he does lose games he has no business losing. Now, that's not Vic to a T, but Vic seems to have this one bugaboo he can't get past, right?
Yeah. Dawn Staley. That's the bugaboo.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And
so, to be fair, a lot of people have the same.
Yeah. I mean, my
just Kirby Smart, man. I mean, it just happens.
Listen. So my first thought, and I actually think it would have been a great 1-for-1 had Ryan Day not gone off and won that national championship, right?
Yes, it would have been Ryan Day, 100%. Because also this idea of this whole group of people who say, I can't win the big one, don't really care, not a good coach, even though, I don't know, you don't lose many games. I would argue that's pretty darn good.
Right. If all but 3 programs would bend over backwards to have you as their coach, you're a pretty damn good coach.
That's what I would argue as well. Thank you, producer Dimitri, for helping us workshop that. Texas checks in at number 2 in this week's AP poll. They are 8-0 and only trail UConn. in the AP rankings. Let's keep it moving with this week's starting five. Lindsay, your first go at the starting five, and you picked someone near and dear to my heart. Who's number 2 this week?
All right. I mean, it's Audi Crooks. I guess it's Iowa State, Indiana in that game.
But it's Audi Crooks.
But it's Audi Crooks. Look, I know it's supposed to be about a game, but in this game against Indiana, which was, one of the biggest tests that Iowa State, maybe probably the biggest test Iowa State has had so far this season, they were able to win that game. I'm sorry, I didn't write down the final score.
I got you. 106-95.
106-95.
There you go.
I was like, what am I missing
100
here?
on a Power 4 opponent and a Big Ten team at that, which we said the Big Ten is up this year. We were talking about that last week on the show. Shout out to Iowa State, man, because we've been talking about the revenge of the Big 12, the revenge of the Big Ten. It was on full display in Fort Myers, in Estero, I should say. Estero, Florida.
But anyways, Audi Crooks broke her record for most points in an Iowa State game that she set a couple of weeks ago at 43 points. She broke that with 47 points in this game, 19 of 25 field goals. And gushing doesn't do it justice and photos don't do it justice. You have to watch her footwork. It is so good. I mean, the spin moves that she just puts on, the touch, it's like she's dancing out there. It's so much fun to watch. And this was a really good game. It was close late in the third. Indiana had Shea Shetsky, who scored 38 points. So there was a really fun duel between Crooks and Shetsky. And I think you really saw how good Iowa State can be, though, along with Audi Crooks. Again, 47 points. Jada Williams had 23 points and 11 assists, and Addie Brown had 17 points and 10 rebounds. Iowa State belongs in the top 10, and I'm so excited to see how this team continues to grow. And, I think they will give TCU a real run at the Big 12 title.
Yeah, I think that I loved that Audi heaped praise on Addie Brown very much is the Robin to Audi Crooks' Batman. I feel like as Audi Crooks continues to enter the mainstream nucleus, this idea of her being one of the premier names in women's college basketball, if for no other reason than, quite frankly, her style of play and her measurables are unlike any of the other players who we regard as top 5, top 10 players in the sport. And it's astounding to see what she does each and every night. But I appreciated the love she gave to Addie Brown, because I think that it's important for Audi to have someone to play off of. Not that she can't create her own shot, but because she does need someone else who she can play off of. And I also think she needs an elite guard in the backcourt who can not only help create transition, but can really create and run the point and create opportunities for both of those two players in the front court. And so Jada Williams' transfer from Arizona, I think, is huge, because without Emily Ryan, I think that this team was lacking that alpha guard. And there was a question of they need a trio. When they went to the NCAA tournament in Audi Crooks' freshman year, and they had that crazy run where they knocked off Maryland, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my goodness, there's this other team in Iowa that's pretty darn good too at basketball, as everyone was falling in love with the Iowa Hawkeyes. And meanwhile, the Cyclones are playing in a regional out on the West Coast, and everyone's like, what the heck is going on here? I think that team was at its best because it wasn't just Audi. There were guards that could also create, and then she had her mainstay in Addie Brown that she could play off of too. And so I think that Jada Williams' transfer is underrated. And as we've talked about before on this show, and by before I mean last week, LOL to her head coach while she was at Arizona, losing now with SMU last week to some like Division II school or whatever it was. In case you missed it, Mitch, I encourage everyone to go back and run through last week's episode. Mitch eloquently delivered all of the losses the ACC has incurred this season to Division II programs, Division III programs, NAIA schools. Anyway, so any opportunity I can get to just make a joke about the ACC, I will. Point being, one of the more underrated transfers this past offseason, Jada Williams, I'm right there with you. It pushes Iowa State right back into that stratosphere of a top 3 team, if not top 2 in the Big 12.
Yep, absolutely. It's we are so lucky.
Yes, we are. And Audi Crooks' beautiful sonorous voice that she graced us with while she was at the under-20 FIBA championships this summer. Her and Flaugier singing together. If you haven't seen it, we keep referencing it on the pod for a reason, because it will brighten your day, whatever time of day you are listening to this podcast. Let's keep it moving with more ACC slander. The fall of Duke. Lindsay, you have a front row seat to what is going on in Durham. So before I start rattling through the stats and info about the 3 straight losses that also came after the Greenbrier 5 debacle, which of course also came on the heels of the opening loss to Baylor on opening day of the season, you tell me, how are the vibes at Duke right now?
They're not good. It's very, very tough to watch this team.
But the good thing is the football team is in the ACC championship game, so at least there's that. That can kind of cover up for Kara Lawson. Yeah.
I do feel like I'm blessed. Like, I do not watch nearly enough college football probably to be on this podcast. And ACC football is definitely not my forte. But listen, it's just really frustrating and sad, honestly, what's happening at Duke. You know, I felt like they were building this momentum last year, making it the Elite Eight, and it was just so clear where they needed to improve. You know, you've got this great defense. Hi, can you get some offense? Can Kara Lawson figure out how to get players open and confident shooting and move with pace? And no, right now the answer is just plain no. And I know they have some injuries. You know, Kara Lawson, as Mitch has talked about, is so high on Emily Skinner, and she's been out. But it's not an excuse for them to be this bad. And I'm not talking about, you know, I'm talking big picture here from everything we've seen this season. Like, there's no shame in losing to UCLA and losing to South Carolina, right? Like, there's no shame. You could be, you know, the number 5 team in the country and lose to those teams back to back and stay the number 5 team in the country. Like, that's how good they are and high in the rankings. But it's just the fact that we just keep seeing this same playbook time and time again. And I don't know where Duke goes from here. They have to find some leaders. They have to find some energy. And there has to just be more flexibility. That's the only thing I can think of. There has to be a plan B and a plan C, because plan A is not working. And, you know, I think it says a lot that they really value defense. That's always been at least their, you know, at least what they had to hang their hat on. And yet their defense has been embarrassing at times this season. I mean, the West Virginia game is the biggest example, and UCLA scored over 80 points on them. And look, I know the UCLA game, Lauren Betts was a late scratch, and so they probably game planned for Lauren Betts, and it seems like we're thrown when it became a very different offense without Lauren Betts. You gotta adjust. You gotta adapt. You still, like, you can't only be good at defense and then give up 83 points to a team that's missing its best player.
And just continue to try to fit a circle peg in a square hole. Like, yeah, it's just not.
I just don't understand what's happening. And I hope it's much more fun for me. I don't root for individual teams, but I live in Greensboro, North Carolina. I'm just over an hour to all 3 of the Triangle teams. Life is more fun for me as a women's basketball reporter when those teams are good, you know? And we started the year with 3 teams close to the top 10. And now you've got Duke out of the rankings, Duke out of the latest bracketology. Duke, Charlie Cream doesn't even have Duke making the tournament right now. And I know there's a long season to go, and the ACC is not going to be good enough. There's going to be room for them to get back into the tournament picture for sure, and to improve. And the floor for Kara Lawson teams is fairly high, I think.
Well, The good news is the latest net rankings, the first of their kind, actually, for the 25-26 season. Lindsay is out. Somehow, some way, Duke is 49th. I don't know how, statistically speaking, outside of the fact that maybe they're accounting for
strength of schedule.
Right.
And schedule.
But here's the thing. They're 0-4 in quad 1. They're 0-1 in quad 2. And they're 3-0 in quad 3 and 4. So, like, hang the banner. I don't know. Like, okay, so you scheduled harder opponents. And so right now that is what is buoying you from basically falling into the quad 2, quad 3 level yourself, and where your teams that are, the teams that are scheduling you in the non-con aren't even benefiting, as in the South Carolinas and UCLAs of the world, because, you just are the same thing as playing a mid-major out of the CAA or the SWAC or the ASUN, with all due respect to those conferences. So do better, Duke. Their only wins as of this writing: Holy Cross, Norfolk State, and Liberty. I think we.
I was at that Norfolk State game, so at least
how they look.
There's that.
Was it a Toby Fournier or a Taina Mare night? Because it's basically one or the other is the bus driver, and they just kind of trade.
It was a little bit of Taina Mare night, but even in that Norfolk State game, the offense didn't look great. I mean, it just didn't look that great. I'm sorry, and I'm not sorry. It's just the truth. But I just keep thinking back to ACC Media Day when Westmore and Kara Lawson, Duke and NC State had two of the hardest non-conference schedules to open up the season. And that's why Duke and NC State have been talked about so much the first few weeks on all your women's basketball podcasts, is because they scheduled really difficult games. And I give them credit for that. But, both of them said, we want to see where our teams measure up right away. And let me tell you, they might have gotten more information than they bargained for. Be careful what you wish for.
Since you referenced number 5 team in the country, you could lose to South Carolina or UConn and still be number 5. The good news, Lindsay, is the number 5 team in the country is up next for the Blue Devils. They will face the LSU Tigers, who, are just averaging essentially 100 points a game. It's just going to be totally normal for the defense that is supposed to be the defense, and maybe they'll figure out offense to face the offense that may have figured out its defense, possibly, although their strength of schedule obviously is nothing to cry home about in Baton Rouge. They're too focused on Lane Kiffin. Ask Kim Mulkey. She will back me up on that. We'll get to that a little bit later in the show. Yeah. Let's keep it moving with number 4 in this week's starting 5. You're headed to Big Ten country for this pick.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out. Ohio State made it into the top 25 this go round, kicked out NC State. And I think this was a Flow Sports special, so I didn't really get to watch it. I want to be really honest about that. But the highlights are really fun. Ohio State rallied in the fourth quarter to take down West Virginia. Jeloni Cambridge scored 22 points. And then Elsa Lamilla, a go-ahead jumper with under 30 seconds left to seal this big win. And they outscored West Virginia, who, the famous for beating
the Greenbrier 5, baby.
Players.
we printed the shirts on this podcast. Like, we're ready. We're home field. Like, we got you.
But they outscored them 28-20 in the fourth. And Ohio State has not been on many radars, including mine. I'll be completely honest, headed into this season. But I think they're going to be a factor in Big Ten play, and I'm excited about it.
That West Virginia team, number 20 in the net. So that's a really nice win, not only for Ohio State, but for the Big Ten at large, because as we said on the show last week, Lindsay, we've been pretty much, blown away by what we've seen from the Big Ten and its various teams. This is not just UCLA and USC's conference and then everyone else. Obviously, what the Michigan sensational sophomores have been able to do, coupled with Ohio State and Indiana, competitive here in the non-con. And then the final team that rounds out our starting 5, you knew that they would somehow work their way into the starting 5. Folks, Lisa Bluter, in her 20-plus years as head coach of the Iowa Hawkeyes, won 8-0 season. Jan Jensen has been the head coach for less than 2 years. She now has 2. Final score in this one that was just an absolute dandy. It was the one game that I had the opportunity to watch from start to finish. Iowa 86, Fairfield 72. first and foremost, want to shout out the Stags for making the trip to Iowa City, not only a difficult place to play. How about that ride in? The coaching staff posted videos of the flight from Connecticut to Iowa City, which took place during the peak of that snowstorm that crossed the Midwest over the weekend.
I had missed that.
They had zero visibility as they came over, to the point that Iowa reporters were having to track the flight, not because of a head coaching search, but because they wanted to make sure the flight actually took off, that they were in flight, in transit. And people are tweeting back at the reporters, who, of course, I used to work with during my time in Iowa. And they're like, why are you flight tracking them? Like, they're on their way. And it's like, hey, have you looked outside? It's a blizzard right now. Like, let's hope that everything is okay with the flight in. They did make it to town, and they put on a show in their visit, their debut at Iowa City, having never traveled out to Carver Hawkeye Arena before. The Stags shot 46% from three, 18 threes. That's a program record, Lindsay. They shot better from beyond the arc than the floor itself. They had just a 40% mark. Wow. From the floor, but they shot 46 from three. So shout out to the Stags. Only 2 for 5 from the free throw line, which is probably what I'm sure the coaching staff was pointing at as to why this one went the way that it did, because Iowa shot 26 free throws in this game, 18 of 26 from the line. They also made a ton of threes, 10 of 21. For me, I think this was a huge story because of the coming out party for Addie Deal, in my estimation. She only had 9 points, and yes, she had 3 turnovers, but she had 3 steals and a timely assist. Really great defensive effort, especially at the end of the first half. Was obviously a top 20, 25 recruit, depending on which metric you looked at, from a season ago, coming into Iowa, committed on the heels of the Caitlin Clark era, coupled with the play of 2 of their biggest returners and catch and shoot shooters from 3-point range. Kylie Furabach and Taylor McCabe both had 4 threes in this game, as McCabe continues to prove that she is more than just a 3-point specialist. She can certainly get to the rack. They have literally printed shirts. Shout out to the good old Ray Gun crew, Lindsay. They have literally printed shirts that says Taylor McCabe is more than a 3-point shooter. But that's not just a saying. Yeah, because she can get to the line. She can hit the floater. She can hit the mid-range. And I think that that's a massive development, coupled with the continued emergence of Ava Hayden, the latest little Frankenstein project that Jan Jensen has brought into a lab and has emerged out of said lab with a complete All-American potential post player. And it's really fun to see. But I thought that game was just so much fun. Yes, when both teams are shooting over 40-some-odd% from 3-point range, it just makes it aesthetically pleasing, coupled with the story of how it took Fairfield quite the journey to get to Iowa City, and then they made it home okay too. So all smiles all around.
I love that. I'm going to have to go back and catch some highlights from that one, because that sounds like my kind of game.
It was. I mean, I had it on TV too, since obviously I covered the Jacksonville Jaguars, and so the Jags were playing. And it was great because the Jags were beating up on the Titans in a game in which both the punter and the long snapper decided to get into fights and throw some WWE moves out there at Nissan Stadium. And so pace of play left a lot to be desired in the NFL game. But meanwhile, in the women's college basketball game, we were off to the races, man, and they still were somewhat playing defense. So I appreciate that from both Iowa and Fairfield. That is this week's starting 5. Before we get to the main event, it is time to ask producer Dimitri, what's the beef?
Pure beef.
Whoa, my James Franklin of women's college basketball. Hey, listen, James Franklin just got another bag from Virginia Tech. This is a compliment to Cori Close. She's going to have a job forever. She's a good coach. Sometimes I just wonder, much like many wonder about Vic Schaefer, if she's ever going to get over the hump. Had a little bit of a run-in with her former star in Janiah Baker, now with the Tennessee Volunteers, and of course, a reoccurring character on this pod, Killa Kim Caldwell. And I'm curious, Lindsay, because this has become the latest Zapruder film in women's sports. Did Janiah Barker, excuse me. Did Janiah Barker not shake hands with her former coach? Did they shake hands in the handshake line? And then Cori Close went in for the hug and Janiah said, nah, I'm good, and sidesteps her. But this has become quite the beef online because, of course, this is a UCLA and Tennessee teams that are in the mix to be a top 10 outfit in the nation, Janiah Barker did tweet, "We shook hands, respect. I wish nothing but the best for Coach Cori and my UCLA fam," with the heart emoji, hands emoji. So, Janiah Barker says there's no beef, but Cori Close obviously did the, oh, okay, be that way. And it got caught on camera. So obviously people are going to make a lot out of it. What do you make out of it?
Well, I love beef, so I don't care what Janiah said. I think there was beef. I think that nobody takes things as personally as elite athletes and coaches. Asia Wilson was recently on doing the media and talking about how personally she takes everything and how petty she is and how much she sees everything as a slight. And that's the qualities that we love. And I mean, I don't understand it. It seems exhausting to me. It just seems exhausting, but they do. And so something happened to make Cori Close react in that way. It could, just, instant meme. Barker certainly did the right thing by saying nothing but respect, but I think that they probably both had a little both are feeling a little petty about how things went down. It was very obvious that Barker was not happy at UCLA last year. I think that might have been the least surprising transfer in the country. I think got to see Barker in action a little bit in Greensboro when Tennessee opened up the season against NC State, and it seems like she's really happy with things. UCLA is looking great. They of course lost to Texas in the Players era, but once again, nothing to hang their hat on, and then they bounced right back with a very dominant win over Tennessee. And so I think we're the winners because, yes, I think there was beef. And I think it was clear that the two did not get along last season.
There is the beef. We love the beef here. 99-77, the final, by the way. And Janiah Barker, I don't want to say she got the last laugh because Cori looked like she was literally laughing. 25 points in 27 minutes, 9 of 17 from the floor. Pretty good. 3 boards and 2 steals to go along with it. So Janiah Barker, Cori Close, you are this week's beef of the week. And look, we love beef. So keep it coming because we love content here on the Women's Basketball Podcast. Before we get to this week's main event, I do want to tell you about our friends from auditoryfx.com. Make your podcast sound bigger and more professional, just like that wonderful open that begins our show each and every week. Just like, Dimitri, can we get it again just for old time's sake? Can I get the beef one more time? Maybe? Possibly? Oh, no.
Pure beef.
How much fun is that, folks? All the audio tools you need to take your show to the next level. The perfect gift for yourself, for the podcaster in your life with the holiday season right around the corner. Make your podcast sound just as elite as ours. Packages for as low as $19.99 with auditoryfx.com. All right, everybody, we're going to make the turn from the college scene over to the WNBA as we look towards this week's main event. Lindsay, a little bit of an update when it comes to the latest in the ongoing WNBPA, WNBA, CBA negotiations. If that wasn't enough acronyms, something tells me we will have more during this segment. The ongoing CBA negotiations have certainly once again proved a bit sticky as another extension, a 60-day extension was granted and was agreed upon between the players and the league on November 30th. And so now we've got well into January for these two sides to figure out what exactly the plan is forward as we move forward heading towards hopefully a 2026 season. Give us some of your news, notes, scoops maybe you've heard when it comes to the very latest with your role at CBS Sports and, of course, covering all women's sports, and where you think we go from here in CBA negotiations.
Yeah, so just to clarify, it's a 40-day extension, so it's set to expire on January 9th, and I think the goal of that is a lot happens in January, free agency, you got to get this draft in, so I think there is a whole lot of motivation to get something settled before then. As of right now, we're pushing the expansion draft, would probably be in early December. That has to be pushed back. But that can be pushed back a month, without really messing up too many things. But I think that if nothing is settled in the next 40 days, we're going to start getting into some interesting territory. But yeah, the deadline was Sunday night. Of course, that was a deadline from the 30-day extension from the previous deadline. And there was really no word until late in the day when the PA sent out a message to me and other reporters that they had proposed this 40-day extension. The league, it was soon announced that, both parties had agreed to this. Of course, like any, like the previous extension, I think either one of them can call it off with there's an out clause if things get really crazy. But in all honesty, it should just last the 40 days. But we have since found out on Monday a little bit more about what the WNBA has been proposing. Sources familiar with the situation have told CBS Sports that the latest proposal from the W, first of all, that it's, featuring unprecedented increases in pay. And, these sources are adamant that this is a different salary structure than the current CBA, which I know, as your listeners will know, is, the current CBA is a fixed salary cap that goes up a fixed 3% each year. And there are revenue share targets, but they are very hard to be triggered. And because they're cumulative, meaning they're based year after year, when the COVID-19 pandemic hit the first year of this deal, it made them impossible to get because they were based off of the 2019 season. So they were already so behind the buck as far as revenue and everything. My dogs have just joined me. So
good. Well, we love dogs on this podcast. Don't you worry. They can pop on.
They really love talking about CBA negotiations. So
I
they
love
get excited about labor talk. So the latest proposal from the WNBA is $1 million as a max salary, plus a revenue share component that would bring that max salary to $1.2 million. So previously it was reported that there was over $1 million being offered as max salary, but in that case, it was about an $850,000 base salary. So you were signing contracts for about $850,000, and then with the projected revenue share, it was going up over $1 million. So this is an increase in pay to where the max base salary, you'd be signing it for $1 million, and this is for the first year. Now, after that, there are, like I said, revenue share components. Does sound like they do involve league revenue and team revenue, which was a sticking point before, where I think it was only league level revenue that was in the previous CBA, and now sources say that the WNBA has proposed a combined element of this. The other important notes are that the growth of the salary cap, it will not be predetermined. So the salary cap would be $5 million, which is up from about $1.5 million for the current CBA. The salary cap goes up to $5 million. And then it would increase, I'm making sure I get this language right. The increases in a year-by-year basis would be directly tied to revenue growth. So that really is different, and something the players have been asking for, that there's more of an upside there. A couple other notes. The proposal, the average salary would exceed $500,000, and the minimum salary would exceed $225,000. So those are the important notes. I've not gotten a comment back from the WNBPA, from the Players Association, and often in these talks, you will have one side present their side to the media one way, and the other side will then present, say, hey, those numbers need more context. So I want to caveat that the PA is not yet, released anything about their proposals or the problems they're having with these proposals. But I do think this is a sign that things are moving in the right direction. The fact that we're now combining league revenue and team revenue, the fact that things are increasing, and the fact that the growth each year is not preset at like a 3%. Now, what the information we don't have is how much of a revenue share is this, right? Is this an actual 50-50 split? Is this even, I don't think we'd ever get to a 50-50 in this negotiation. Is this 30-70 or is this, 15-85? And, I don't know that we'll know those exact numbers because everything is so in flux. But, we don't know how hard it is to reach those targets, whether those targets are seen as attainable. And I think those are some things we're waiting to hear from the players, if this is transformational enough, because what we've had is kind of this stalemate over the players saying they want transformational change, Kathy Engelbert saying she wants transformational change, but you have two different interpretations of what that means. And it seemed that the W seemed to just think that that would be an increase in salaries, a significant increase in salaries. And nobody is saying that going from a $1.5 million salary cap to a $5 million salary cap isn't significant. But what players want is really an opportunity to experience this growth in real time, because these players can't. Yeah, you're always building for the future, but these players want it now. They're doing their work now, and so I think we have a lot left to figure out. But it looks to me, based on this reporting, the reporting I've done, and the little information we have, that things are moving in a positive direction for players.
With all due respect to my co-host, Mitch Northam, so happy that we have you with us, Lindsay, for this episode, especially to your point, as it, knock on wood, finally feels like we are progressing. And not that Mitch isn't involved in these conversations too, but knowing that he's pretty bogged down with both having an infant and also covering women's basketball 7 days a week.
He does the college stuff. So he knows more about, trust me, he knows more about college basketball than anybody on the planet.
Yeah. No, but this is huge because to this point, I'm a couple follow-up questions, because then we do want to wrap up the pod, and we do have some picks for making money with Mitch from Mitch Northam before he had to attend to family duties. And so first, let's start with this in terms of the revenue sharing, because that is the biggest bugaboo. If Dawn Staley is Vic Schaefer's bugaboo in CBA negotiations, rev share is the bugaboo. And on the heels of so many of these these athletes, professional athletes, having just been student athletes, especially those that did enter college during the age of NIL, in which you could make name, image, and likeness in the wild, wild west that is college sports right now. And all of a sudden, then you enter the pros and you're told, oh, you can only make this much money in terms of your salary. You can do whatever you want, endorsements, but you can only make this much. I think that that's where we're just entering a world where across the board, women's sports, men's sports, basketball, football, whatever it may be, we're just entering a new world in which, because the toothpaste got out of the tube so quickly at the collegiate level, now we get to the pros, and quite frankly, with Reddit and the internet that readily available to these athletes, they're like, no, I know that this is how much the league generated last year, and therefore I would like a cut of the pie. Just like when I was in college, if my university was going to sell my jersey, I wanted to benefit from that in some respects. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now. And so that's where rev sharing is so important. But in the same vein, what makes the WNBA CBA negotiation so interesting is the presence of Unrivaled. And so I do want to ask just your thoughts on Unrivaled, maybe even Project B, some of these alternative leagues, how they have approached rev share, and maybe if that has impacted in turn how the players union has approached these negotiations.
Yeah, I think what the common theme in all of this is that these players are becoming businesswomen at the age of 17, 18 now. It used to be that college athletes
or kids,
very smart, go to school, like stayed in. I'm not calling them dumb, but they were not these brands. They weren't these money-making machines. You have to have a business sense. It's such a young age to be a part of this. And I think that that's something that the WNBA players used to not develop till a few years into their professional careers. And, and then you have Unrivaled, which was started by two WNBA players, by Nafisa Collier and Brianna Stewart. Players are getting equity in that league. And so again, they're not just players, they're business women. And so it's going to make negotiations a lot more intense. They know a lot more than they used to.
Right.
They don't know everything, and nobody knows everything, because it's very hard to get proper accounting from the WNBA. And that's because of the way it's tied to the NBA and because of the way that so many owners of WNBA teams also own NBA teams, and the way they do their accounting and their move their books around, I don't know if they know the exact numbers of what the WNBA, because their offices are merged together and their ticket sales departments are merged together. And
so Nafisa is sitting here like begging for numbers, and Adam Silver's like, I don't know what the numbers are.
Yeah,
Sorry.
and I'd
love to help you.
But I really think
that. Yeah, maybe he didn't say that initially. I'm just glad we've gotten to a point where Adam Silver and company will at least talk about the word rev share. I think that is a significant development, even if it's a low bar.
It's a huge development. So what you have though is players who are no longer okay having people scare them about them asking for more, ending the business, ending the league. And women athletes across the board have been this, the perceived lack of interest in their product, which we all know there's plenty of interest there. But it's been weaponized against them. And the people who are running these programs and teams have seen, we've seen this in soccer, we've seen this in hockey, have wanted to be the heroes. And they say, it's only because of us that you have anything. If you ask for more, it will all go away. And these women now know that is not true. There is way too much money. There is a $1 billion television contract here. Teams' valuations are $500 million. There is real money happening here. Nobody can cry poor. Now, will they? I just saw a headline on The Athletic today about the owner of the Yankees. I'm blanking on his name. Hal
Steinbrenner. Yep. It's okay. I'm the resident Yankees fan. You can bash him all you want. Please do.
Well, he was just saying that the Yankees weren't profitable this year and claiming poor, right? So these owners are all going to say that, right? They are all going to say that. But you have to know, there's so much more to it than just, what they want to finagle as profitability. And so I don't think that Unrivaled is a threat to the WNBA, and I never have. It is in the off season. It is a 3x3 league. It is not, the teams are not tied to cities or communities. It is a very fun league that I hope continues to grow and continues to be part of the ecosystem. It is not the WNBA. And I feel the same about Project B, although with the Saudi ties, I feel a little bit less excited about that. But players, it's a barnstorming league that is going to places and setting up, and it's not wanting people to get interested in teams and franchises. It's just about following the players around. It's not a direct competitor to the W. But what these leagues are providing is models of what can be paid to female athletes if you are willing to. Now, to play devil's advocate here and use a line I'm sure that WNBA owners would say, we don't know how sustainable these leagues are long term.
We're a big league, so if you don't want to play with us, then that's on you.
Right, but it's other ways for players to capitalize on their market share and to not be as beholden to these threats of, we can shut down your league. Nice league here, would be shame if we took it away. There's too much money on the line. It's why I've always felt a deal will get done, because there's real money happening here. Right. There's real money to split around. And whether the players get the full complete economic model shift that they want, whether they just get partially there in this negotiation, we'll just have to wait and see. But it's exciting times. We're going to see $1 million WNBA salaries. We're going to see more revenue share, and we're going to see growth. And I want the players to keep pushing those numbers up as much as they can. And I want a season to happen. So that's where I am.
Yeah, no, and these are the words of encouragement we need in this world of people on the timeline saying, lock the doors, Indiana Fever, to Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Don't let anybody in, protect the league, this, that, and the other. I don't want to see that on the timeline. I want to see some basketball on my timeline. And so to that end, Lindsay, let's wrap our main event by this. give me your opinion. Again, that 40-day extension that goes into January 9th. Sorry, I misspoke. It said 60. It's 40 days. Even numbers. You know what I mean.
Oh, I totally.
Even numbers. Even I knew it was more than 30. It was into January. But hey, listen, I can't believe it's December 1st as we're recording this podcast. So 40-day extension, in your estimation, does the deal get done by then? If not, what happens? / then expansion draft right after? When do training camps open? When can players go into the facility? I know obviously right now during this extension right now, they can have access to the facility.
Yeah, I do think it's going to get done, and maybe I'm being naive and Pollyannish here. I'm very, think anyone, I'm wearing a union hat right now, my Writers Guild of America hat from my days at Think Progress, and we were in the Writers Guild. So, but I'm also pro, there's so much momentum here. It would be dumb for both sides not to figure out how to a way to make it work. And I think the pressure is on the owners to figure out a way to make this happen. I think it's going to be an exciting change. And my guess is, though, as much as the players are fighting, as cool as these headlines are going to be, it's also going to seem outdated really quickly, because that's how quickly women's sports are growing. It's just the reality.
And it's also why, again, promise, this is not an ACC slandered podcast, especially since both Mitch and I have a vote in the weekly honor roll for player and newcomer.
As do I. Yes.
So, exactly. Like I promise, we're not trying to slander the ACC here, but this is part of why you don't sign the grant of rights that goes through 2036 in terms of ACC and its television rights deal.
Oh, for sure.
Like you don't, and that's why with this negotiation for the W, I'm so interested to see how long the CBA negotiation will last. It's probably a 5-year term would be my expectation. But to your point, it's probably going to feel outdated within 2 to 3 years because the game is exploding. And you're just going to have to live with that, because the NFL is living with that right now because of their CBA that they signed in 2020. That is, I believe, an 8 or a 9-year deal. And they already feel like that's outdated in 2025.
Yeah, it's things are shifting fast, and I think the players are trying all they can to get a system in place that allows them to experience some of that growth in real time. I think they will get partially there, and I think the money will get high enough that I think there will be pressure from the rank and file players too. Remember, the WNBA is, over 150, 160 now with these
over
expansion teams,
180
players, who an average salary of $500,000, let's get moving.
Yeah, let's get moving. Love it. Let's keep it moving here on the Women's Basketball Podcast, because we still got to make some money with Mitch. And then we have last call, any storylines that we missed from today's episode with the one and only Lindsay Gibbs of CBS Sports. Let's get to making money with Mitch, who, by the way, 7-2 on the season. Cha-ching.
Wow.
Mitch went 2-1 last week, Lindsay. His only loss in last week's picks. Wait for it. He picked UCLA to beat Texas 4.5 outright. It's all right. It happens. It happens to the best of us. He was right on the nose with South Carolina absolutely dominating Duke, and Fairfield covering against the Iowa Hawkeyes. Let's begin with game number 1 of this 3-pack from our friend Mitch Northam. He has Oklahoma, a 5.5-point favorite at home against NC State on Wednesday, 7 p.m. That game is on the Deuce on the mothership. Lindsay, what say you? You cover Westmore and NC State regularly. Do you think Aaliyah Chavez and company can hold them off by 6 points in that one on Wednesday night?
Yeah, unfortunately, I do. I gotta say, I'm with Mitch on this one. NC State is struggling to find the leadership it needs, and I don't think that's going to be solved by Wednesday.
Yeah, as we record this podcast on Monday. He also has a game that we already mentioned once on the show. LSU, a 5.5-point favorite, only a 5.5-point favorite, Lindsay, at Duke Thursday night. That game is at 9 Eastern on ESPN. I know you want to talk a little bit about Kim Mulkey, Flau'jae Johnson, what that offense has been able to do in last call, but I'll give you the floor to do it here as well. Obviously, we've already gone into detail into the depths of Duke's despair. Say that 5 times fast. But when it comes to LSU, why is this an easy money pick for Mitch? Unless maybe you think Kara Lawson figures something out.
I don't. I think I agree with Mitch on this one too. LSU has set the record for the most consecutive 100-point games in NCAA D1 history. 8 straight to start the season. They have 896 points in their first 8 games.
It's just so stupid.
That's just absolutely absurd. Duke will be the toughest team by far, though, they face, even given Duke's struggles. I will be there. Pray for the media. It is a 9:00 p.m. Eastern tip-off in Durham, which means we'll be getting, some Kim Mulkey after dark in press.
Whoever asks her about Lane Kiffin, I will send you a fruit basket, because I need to know after the comments she made at Tulane, which, by the way, I mean, I think you can make the argument. I've got some notes on Tulane coming up in last call. You can make the argument that Tulane may have been the best team they have faced up to this point in that 8-0 start. The Tigers have faced Houston Christian, Southeast Louisiana, Georgia Southern, Charlotte, Tulane, Alcorn State, Marist, and Wazoo before they travel to face the now unranked Blue Devils later this week. So just also of note, averaging over 100 points per game, but they're also not exactly playing South Carolina and UCLA and Texas at the Players era. But that's okay. No. We'll forgive you, Kim. You got to win the games on your schedule, and that's the schedule she put together. But I digress.
I would say it's hard to find 2 more opposite approaches to scheduling than Kara Lawson and Kim Mulkey, and probably it's hard to find 2 more polar opposite people in women's basketball than Kara Lawson and Kim Mulkey, so that fits.
I mean, honestly, people, I know it's going to be a good Thursday night football matchup, but again, it's a 9:00 tip. At the very least, flip out of Amazon. You guys are women's basketball fans if you're listening to this podcast. Point is, you're going to need a TV for this game. Whether you're watching another game, whether you're watching football simultaneously, you are going to need to have a camera on both Kim and Kara the entire time, let alone on this game, and have eyes on it. Final game that Mitch has picked in this week's Making Money with Mitch. He has the Washington Huskies, an 11.5-point underdog covering the spread at USC. That game is Sunday on the Big Ten Network at 8 p.m. Eastern. Still feels wrong. This part I think you will agree with me on, Lindsay, to say that Washington and USC are playing on the Big Ten Network, and this is a conference game, the start of Big Ten play this weekend. The Huskies, 11.5-point underdogs, going on the road again against a USC team that we know is without Juju Watkins, but Jazzy Henderson has taken the next step in her debut season. Yeah. So that's also a reoccurring bit on this program.
Yeah, I know.
Yes. I feel like at this point, I just have to keep saying Henderson until we get to, I don't know why my brain has this mental block and thinks her last name is Henderson and not Davidson, another generic name. But anyways, I digress. Do you think Jazzy and company, they can hold off the Huskies, or do you think this is a nice little, Mitch is trying to put a little sprinkle out there and be a little different?
I'll be honest, I have not must watch. That is a hard thing to say. Watched much Washington.
Yeah, I have not either, but he's been high on the Huskies, so we'll take him.
Listen, I'm not. I'll counter Mitch occasionally, but I got to be really certain. So I'm.
Again, for me, it's just this thought of this 8 p.m. Eastern Sunday game on the Big Ten Network, and it's being played at the Gallon Center in Los Angeles. Again, basketball purist over here, but that's okay. It's a fun pick. Shout out to Kelsey Plum University. Hope they cover for the sake of one Mitchell Northam. Again, this week's 3-pack. Oklahoma, 5.5-point home favorite against NC State. That game is Wednesday. Lindsay and Mitch, I believe, will be in attendance, 7 p.m. Eastern. LSU, a 5.5-point favorite. Oh, no, sorry, you guys won't be at Oklahoma.
No, we will not be in Oklahoma.
You guys will be at Duke on Thursday. Yes. My mistake. Locations, words,
I
hard.
get it.
You guys will be at Duke for LSU, the Kim and Kara experience. I need cameras to be rolling at all times. That game is at 9 p.m. Eastern. Pray for press row. And then Washington, an 11.5-point underdog to cover the spread against Jazzy Davidson, not Henderson, Lindsay Gottlieb, and friends in Los Angeles. It is time for last call. Before I get to some of the other storylines and shout outs, plugs that I want to get to, Lindsay, the floor is yours. What have we missed on your debut episode as a sometimes host of the women's basketball podcast on OG Triangle Media that you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, just a few fun little things. USA gold medal at the 2025 FIBA 3x3 AmeriCup. 21-19 over Canada in the final. Alicia Gray, MVP. The team was Shakira Alston and Naz Hillman, who I believe also has a hyphenated last name right now too. Okay. So I think probably got married. Good for her. And then
listen, just like a little news dump there. Like, oh, Naz has got a
I know. Also Veronica Burton. I noticed it, but I didn't write it down. So, we're in the holiday days a little bit still here. So kudos to them for getting that gold medal back. Also had a fun game. Look, someone who watches a lot of Duke and Carolina women's basketball, I don't usually get to see huge offensive explosions. So I get excited when I see them in women's basketball. And we had Oklahoma 109, Florida State 91 during Feast Week. Florida State hit 19 3-pointers and still lost by 18 points.
I mean, that's like Fairfield. Fairfield had that.
No, yeah, it's exactly the same. I didn't get to watch this, but I felt like that was a stat line worth mentioning. Aaliyah Chavez, 29 points, 7 3-pointers. She's is coming along nicely.
She's a dog.
And then my last kind of thing is just that I'm excited for this SEC ACC challenge this week. We've already talked about Duke, LSU, and NC State, Oklahoma. A couple of other fun ranked ones are Notre Dame, Ole Miss, South Carolina, Louisville, and a big one, Texas, UNC. That's going to be in Texas. So there's some fun stuff happening this week. It's always a really nice little couple of days before the real conference play gets going.
I have to ask, just because, again, we love beef on this show. We love content, as you very much know. Who do you think more drama could result from in that Notre Dame Ole Miss game? Hannah Hidalgo or Cody McMahon? Because both are two reoccurring villains on this program. Not that we don't love them as basketball players, but we do.
Villain positive. Villain.
Yeah, they're good for the brand.
Positive. Yeah.
Right. They're good for the brand because they get the common folk talking about basketball. And Hannah Hidalgo has certainly done that so far this year. But for those who are also in the world of women's basketball, you're also, like, man, everyone but your best friend on the team transferred. That seems like a red flag to me. Cody McMahon, every game she took on the floor for Ohio State, she's out here fighting somebody, and now she's transferring to go hang out with Coach Yo and talking about a bag she was looking for in the portal. So so that's a good one for me, I think, in terms of our characters that count here on the women's basketball podcast. I'm excited for that.
I think since it's going to be in South Bend.
Okay. So home cooking.
So I would say Cody.
He goes back to the Midwest. Oh, and like, plus she'll probably make a joke about like, oh, it's still love for me in Ohio State. It's all love. So it's always, we hate Notre Dame. We hate, other teams in this area. I don't know. I love Coach Yo though. So, and I have to defend Coach Yo on this podcast sometimes for Mitch.
Coach Yo fans here.
Shout out Coach Yo. We love Coach Yo. Speaking of Coach Yo, she used to coach in the ASUN conference. Part of why Iowa Fairfield on Sunday, Lindsay, was the only game that I watched from wire to wire was because I called 5 games between the JU women, the Jacksonville University women's team, and the UNF men's and women's basketball teams this feast week. And so had a chance to see all of those teams up close and personal, including a JU squad that knocked off Georgia Tech a few weeks ago. I got to be on the call of their win over FIU last Saturday, 2 Saturdays ago, which was a lot of fun. And then I was on the call at the UNF Thanksgiving Classic, where University of North Florida, 5 total wins last year, 1 win in conference play. They got 2 wins over Bethune-Cookman and Campbell. Not exactly Duke and South Carolina, but Campbell was in the WNIT last year. They won that one at the buzzer. Shout out to Alanya Walden for the half-court buzzer beater, which was the second I have called at UNF Arena in the last 4 years. So keep giving me more highlights. My color analyst, Nancy Miller, the former head coach of the UNF women's basketball team, the Hall of Famer, goes on the broadcast. She's like, man, I was so excited. I think that's my first buzzer beater. And I go, Nancy, we literally called one with Jose Placer and Amir Abdur-Rahim in USF like 3 years ago. And she goes, oh, that's right. I forgot about that. So shout out to Nancy because we had a lot of fun. And it was, I think, definitely a good proof of concept for Erica Lambert's young squad. Shout out to Erica. Shout out to Special Jennings. Good folks here in the River City of Jacksonville. So want to make sure we gave them some love. Speaking of the ASUN Conference, one game we did not hit on, but I know Mitch would yell at us if we did not, especially because we have a lot of friends down there in Fort Myers. While they were hosting a tournament, there were some gnarly basketball, some good basketball being played by Raina Harmon's Eagles out there in Las Vegas as FGCU took down Stanford during Feast Week. They come back to Florida and now on December 20th have to host South Carolina, who has now already lost once this season in the non-conference slate. But hey, hopefully we're going to get Raina or assistant coach Sid McCaskill here on the pod at some point in time because I've talked to both of them about popping in. And we love the Eagles here, the perennial ASUN powers. And hopefully they keep it going, especially because Mitch thought that Stanford was back and now they're not. And so Mitch has questions about exactly how good Stanford is moving forward. Speaking of the ACC and teams that we like to sometimes knock. So yeah.
Any other reaction? Myself really quickly and just say the Notre Dame game versus Ole Miss is in Mississippi. So maybe Hidalgo will be the heel. So.
Okay. And I could see that. I know Lane Kiffin will not be there. So at the very least, we don't have to worry about him playing the heel. So that's a positive, a net positive, if you may. And then another game that I know Mitch Northam would yell if we didn't hit on, Maryland and Kentucky, a game that was won by Brenda Fries's Terps. Mitch has long said, and I actually talked to a couple of the different coaching staffs who were here in town for that Thanksgiving tournament about just the length of Kentucky. It's something that you just don't see it every single day when you've got 3 players in your starting 5 who are taller than 6'4", 6'5", and the fact that Maryland was able to overcome it. I don't want to say they're the antithesis of South Carolina, but they are a team that has such depth. And unlike last year where they only brought one player back in Cheyenne Sellers from the previous roster, this is a team that about 50-50 brought in some players through the transfer portal, but also had that strong nucleus from a team last year.
That's a lot for Brenda Free's team, 50-50.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot for Brenda and for any team in 2020.
I say with love. I used to live in D.C. and cover Maryland. So.
We love Brenda. And Brenda's a Cedar Rapids, Iowa native. So shout out to Brenda. Her and her Terps were among our teams in our way too early Final Four back in April. We had Killa Kim and Janiah Barker in Tennessee too, but we'll see how that one ages. So. All right. Well, Lindsay, where can we find you this week between all the various platforms that you are reporting on all women's sports, not just women's basketball, between CBS, your podcast, Power Plays? Where can we find you this upcoming week and beyond?
Thank you. Yeah. Hoping to do a little more social media this week. I haven't been good at it this season, kind of easing back into it. Power Plays has some big news, giving a little relaunch and move this week or next. I'm still perfecting that, but stay tuned. And yeah, just keep an eye on what we're doing over at CBS Sports. I've been with them a couple months now, mainly working in women's basketball, writing and editing. And just kind of helping with general content. So yeah, keep an eye. I think our reporters are doing a really great job. And I'm excited for some of the stuff that we have planned for the next couple of weeks. So appreciate everyone kind of adding the CBS Sports Women's Basketball group to your feed. It's not just
our
me.
Ecosystem.
Yeah, your ecosystem. Yep.
Yes, we talk about ecosystem a lot here in Jacksonville, so I like to throw that word around from time to time.
Good word.
Yeah, exactly. With regards to LSU Duke Thursday, where else other games that you have coming up on your docket?
That's the only one I know for sure. I gotta kind of solidify my December calendar, which it's December 1st, so
I'm
probably do that. But the other 2 triangle teams are in SEC country for the SEC ACC Challenge. So I've kind of had this Duke LSU game circled for a while, and after that, we'll see.
I am sure that Kim and Kara will deliver in one way or another. I feel you too on the December calendar front. In the words of San Francisco 49ers head coach Kyle Shanahan, we are all day to day. And that is why we take it one day at a time when it comes to women's basketball. Every day is a great day to support women's basketball. And there's always great games on as college hoop season in full swing. And as you heard from Lindsay. Hopefully, WNBA season right around the corner as scheduled, folks. We, of course, will keep you posted on the very latest here on the Women's Basketball Podcast on the OG Triangle Media. Lindsay, appreciate you sitting in for Mitch, who will be back next week. It is time for the end of the show, and that can mean only one thing. Do you know what that means, Lindsay?
You got to fill me in.
1,
I'm
2, 3.
forgetting.
Get your twos up. Get your twos up. Here
Okay,
we go. Deuces.
Deuces.